Most people read the story of Job and see only suffering. They see a man who lost his children, his wealth, his health, and everything he held dear. They close the book feeling afraid that God might test them the same way, afraid that everything they've built could vanish overnight. But if we look at Job chapter 42 through the lens of Napoleon Hill's philosophy, we see a mathematical law hidden in plain sight. A prosperity principle so precise that it guaranteed Job would receive exactly double everything he lost. Not some, not most, double, every last thing. And this wasn't charity. This wasn't luck. This was cosmic law in action. If you've lost money in a bad investment, if your business collapsed, if your savings disappeared, if opportunities slipped through your fingers, you need to understand what Napoleon Hill called the seed of equivalent benefit. Because embedded in every loss is a metaphysical code for restoration. Job activated it, Thomas Edison activated it, Andrew Carnegie activated it, and today you're going to learn exactly how they did it. This isn't about waiting for a miracle. This is about triggering a spiritual principle that has governed restoration for centuries. By the end of this teaching, you'll know the exact mental posture that turns devastation into doubled abundance. Stay with me. Before we unlock the restoration code, we must understand why Job experienced loss in the first place. Most religious teachers will tell you Job was being tested, that God allowed Satan to torment a righteous man to prove his faith. But Napoleon Hill taught us to look deeper. He taught us that every external condition is first an internal condition made visible. In Think and Grow Rich, Hill wrote, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." The reverse is also true. Whatever the mind harbors in fear or doubt, it can manifest as loss. Job himself confessed the metaphysical mechanism of his downfall. In Job chapter 3, verse 25, he declared, "For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me, and that which I was afraid of is come unto me." This is not poetry. This is cosmic confession. Job had been holding a thought pattern of fear of loss, fear of catastrophe, fear that his wealth was temporary. And the universal substance, which Napoleon Hill called infinite intelligence, responded with absolute precision to that vibration. Ralph Waldo Emerson explained this principle in his essay on compensation. He wrote that nothing is gotten for nothing. Every gain has a corresponding loss. Every loss contains a corresponding gain. The universe maintains perfect balance. Job's fear created a debt in his consciousness, a debt that had to be paid in experience. This wasn't punishment. This was law. The same law that builds fortunes also dismantles them when the mind shifts from faith to fear. Henry Ford once said that whether you think you can or you think you cannot, you are right. Job thought catastrophe was possible. He meditated on it. He rehearsed it mentally. And infinite intelligence, which knows no moral judgment, only responds to mental images, delivered exactly what his dominant thoughts requested. This is the uncomfortable truth that separates metaphysical masters from victims. Your losses were not random. They were the materialization of an inner conviction you held, consciously or unconsciously, about your vulnerability. Napoleon Hill studied over 500 millionaires and discovered that every single one of them had faced devastating loss at some point. But the ones who activated the restoration law did something different. They refused to accept loss as final. They understood that material conditions are temporary. Mental conditions are causal. Job's physical devastation was the shadow. His mental fear was the substance casting that shadow. And the moment he shifted that inner substance, everything external had to reorganize itself to match the new pattern. Napoleon Hill devoted an entire chapter in Think and Grow Rich to what he called the seed of equivalent benefit. He discovered that every setback carries within it the seed of an equal or greater advantage, not metaphorically, literally. Thomas Edison proved this law when his entire laboratory burned to the ground in December 1914. Decades of research, millions of dollars in equipment, prototypes, notes, gone. When his son found him watching the flames, Edison wasn't weeping, he was smiling. He turned to his son and said, "Go get your mother. She'll never see a fire like this again." The next morning, Edison called his employees together and said, "We just got rid of a lot of rubbish. Now we can start fresh." Within 3 weeks, he had invented the modern phonograph. Within months, his company had recovered financially. Within a year, he was wealthier than before the fire. How? He activated the law Job activated. He refused to dwell on loss. He immediately began searching for the seed of benefit hidden in the ashes, and because he searched with absolute faith, he found it. Hill interviewed Edison personally for his research. Edison told him, "I never allow myself to become discouraged under any circumstances. The moment I start dwelling on what went wrong, I've already lost twice." This is metaphysical precision. Your attention is your capital. Where you invest it determines what multiplies in your experience. Edison invested his attention in the new opportunity the fire created. He didn't deny the loss. He transmuted it. He used it as raw material for innovation. Job did the same thing. But his breakthrough didn't come from positive thinking alone. It came from a specific shift described in Job chapter 42, verse 10. The scripture reads, "And the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends." This is the key most people miss. Job stopped praying for himself. He stopped rehearsing his pain. He stopped demanding explanation. Instead, he redirected his mental energy toward blessing others. He prayed for the very friends who had judged him, criticized him, and abandoned him in his suffering. Napoleon Hill called this the mastermind principle. He taught that when two or more minds unite in harmony toward a definite purpose, they create a third invisible force more powerful than the sum of the individual minds. Job created a mastermind alliance not through agreement, but through forgiveness. The moment he released resentment and prayed restoration over his critics, he broke the vibrational pattern that had kept him in lack. He shifted from victim consciousness to creator consciousness, and infinite intelligence responded instantly. Earl Nightingale, who studied Hill's work extensively, said, "We become what we think about most of the time." Job had been thinking about his losses, the injustice, the pain, the betrayal. But when he prayed for his friends, he was forced to think about their blessing instead. This wasn't noble sentiment. This was strategic mental redirection. He couldn't simultaneously curse his enemies and remain in victim frequency. The act of blessing elevated his vibration to the exact frequency where restoration lives. And at that precise moment, everything doubled. Job, chapter 42. Verse 10 doesn't say Job got his wealth back eventually. It says, "The Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before." Twice, not approximately, not symbolically, mathematically. Job had 7,000 sheep. He received 14,000. He had 3,000 camels. He received 6,000. He had 500 yoke of oxen. He received 1,000. This wasn't metaphor. This was cosmic mathematics in action. Napoleon Hill discovered that infinite intelligence operates with absolute precision. In The Law of Success, he wrote, "There is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which, in its original state, permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspaces of the universe." This thinking stuff responds to thought with the same reliability that soil responds to seed. Plant corn, harvest corn, plant wheat, harvest wheat, plant thoughts of doubled restoration, harvest doubled restoration. The law doesn't negotiate, it calculates. But here's what most people miss. Job didn't receive double by demanding it. He received double by aligning with the law that governs restoration. That law requires 3 conditions. First, release of the old. Job had to stop clutching his former wealth mentally. He had to stop identifying as the man who lost everything. Second, service to others. He had to pray for his friends. He had to give before receiving. Third, faith in the unseen. He had to believe restoration was not only possible, but inevitable, even when every physical circumstance screamed otherwise. Andrew Carnegie, who mentored Napoleon Hill, built a fortune worth over $300 billion in today's money. But he lost everything twice before his final breakthrough. Each time, he applied what he called the law of increasing returns. He said, "No man becomes rich unless he enriches others." This is the Job principle. You cannot hoard your way to abundance. You cannot protect your way to prosperity. You must circulate, you must bless, you must give even when it seems you have nothing left to give. Thomas Edison applied the same law. After the fire, he didn't retreat. He didn't cut expenses and shrink. He expanded, he hired more people, he took on bigger projects. He acted as if the wealth was already restored before it manifested physically. This is what Napoleon Hill called acting as if. You must embody the consciousness of restoration before the evidence appears. Job didn't wait until he saw 14,000 sheep to believe he was restored. He believed he was restored, and then 14,000 sheep appeared to match his belief. The double portion isn't random generosity. It's compensation for faith sustained under pressure. It's interest earned on mental investment. Every day, Job maintained his integrity while suffering. He was depositing faith into an invisible account. Every day, he refused to curse God and die. He was compounding spiritual interest. And when the tipping point came, when he finally released resentment and blessed his critics, the entire account was paid out in full, with interest, doubled, precise, mathematical, law. You're not Job, you didn't lose livestock, but you've lost something. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's opportunity. Maybe it's time you can't recover. Maybe it's a relationship that ended badly. Maybe it's a business that failed. The question isn't whether you've experienced loss. The question is whether you're going to activate the restoration code Job activated. Because the law that worked in ancient Israel works in modern America. It works in Brazil. It works in Europe. It works everywhere consciousness exists. Henry Ford lost his first 2 automobile companies to bankruptcy. Both times investors forced him out of his own creation. Both times he was publicly humiliated. Both times he could have quit. But Ford understood what Napoleon Hill would later document. He understood that failure is nothing more than education. In his autobiography, Ford wrote, "Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently." Ford didn't see his bankruptcies as losses. He saw them as expensive training, and when he finally launched the Ford Motor Company, he applied everything he'd learned from failing. Within 5 years, he was a millionaire. Within 10, he was revolutionizing global manufacturing. This is the seed of equivalent benefit in action. Ford's losses contained the intelligence that made him successful. If he'd succeeded on his first attempt, he would have lacked the wisdom to sustain it. The bankruptcy forced him to understand financial management, investor relations, and production efficiency at a level comfort never teaches. Job's suffering forced him to understand the mechanics of mental causation. The loss wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Napoleon Hill interviewed Ford personally and discovered that Ford attributed his success not to talent, but to his willingness to search for benefit in every setback. So how do you activate this law right now? First, you must stop rehearsing the loss. Stop telling the story of what went wrong. Every time you describe your failure, you're watering that seed instead of the seed of benefit. Hill wrote, "What the mind dwells upon, it multiplies. If you dwell on betrayal, you'll manifest more betrayal. If you dwell on scarcity, you'll experience deeper scarcity. You must ruthlessly guard your mental diet. No complaints, no blame, no victim narratives, only the question, What equivalent benefit exists in this situation that I haven't recognized yet? Second, pray for those connected to your loss. If a business partner betrayed you, bless them. If an employer fired you unjustly, pray for their success. This isn't about them. This is about breaking the vibrational prison of resentment. Resentment keeps you tied to the past. Blessing cuts the cord. Job's restoration didn't begin until he prayed for his friends. Yours won't begin until you release everyone involved in your loss from mental prison. Forgiveness isn't optional. It's mechanical. It's the key that unlocks the doubled return. Third, act as if restoration is already complete. Don't wait for evidence. Napoleon Hill called this applied faith. Job didn't wait to see the flocks before accepting his restoration. He accepted it internally first, and the external followed. You must do the same. Make decisions today as if your wealth is already restored. Speak about your future as if it's guaranteed. Treat yourself as someone infinite intelligence has already blessed with the double portion. The physical world has no choice but to conform to the mental image you hold with unwavering conviction. Let's bring this teaching into perfect focus. Job lost everything because fear created a vibrational debt. The universe always balances the scales, but loss is never final unless you make it final in consciousness. The moment Job shifted from self-pity to service, from complaint to blessing, from resentment to forgiveness, the cosmic machinery of restoration engaged. And it delivered with mathematical precision, exactly double. Not because Job deserved it, but because he aligned with the law that governs it. Napoleon Hill spent his entire life documenting this principle. He interviewed the richest, most successful people in history and discovered they all understood one truth. Your external world is a perfect reflection of your internal world. Change the inner and the outer must follow. This isn't religion. This isn't philosophy. This is physics, mental physics. You are not a victim of circumstances. You are a creator using consciousness as your medium. And right now, in this moment, you have the power to initiate your restoration sequence. Here's your metaphysical resolution. Decide now that your loss contained a seed. Decide that this seed, when properly cultivated through forgiveness, service, and unwavering faith, sets the stage for a harvest that can restore what you lost. Not someday, but beginning in consciousness now. Write this down. I release all resentment. I bless everyone connected to my loss. I accept my doubled restoration as cosmic law. I act as if it's already complete. And I give thanks to infinite intelligence for turning my captivity just as it turned Job's captivity. This is the Napoleon Hill Wealth Code. This is the biblical secret hidden in Job, chapter 42. And this is your invitation to join a community of people who refuse to accept loss as final. If this teaching resonated with you, if you felt something shift inside while listening, subscribe to this channel right now. Join thousands of manifestors who are applying these ancient metaphysical laws to modern financial freedom. Every video on this channel is designed to upgrade your prosperity consciousness. Every teaching builds on the last. You're not here by accident. You're here because infinite intelligence guided you to the exact information your consciousness needed to trigger restoration. Napoleon Hill said it best. Whatever your mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. You've now conceived the possibility of doubled restoration. The only question left is whether you'll believe it enough to act on it. Job did. Edison did. Ford did. Carnegie did. And now it's your turn. The law is waiting. The double portion is encoded in your loss. Activate it today.